You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor, subscribe to the channel, leave your comments below, and be sure to smash that like button. Every time we've talked about LSU football here, in particular over the last month, it's largely been, if not the bowl game, it's been conversations about LSU's transfer portal class, which has all of us, I think, feeling pretty good about LSU in 2025. The number one portal class in the country, 14 signees. My contention is no less than 7 of them will be immediate starters, and they are not done as LSU continues to actively pursue both safety and offensive line help. Well, there's a couple of updates on 2 of the safeties we talked about earlier in the week. Keon Scott from Auburn and Tavarius Kolley from NC State. Let's start with Keon Scott. Scott, you might remember, is the veteran who played the first couple of years of his college career in junior college, transferred to Auburn, was a 3-year starter, actually led the SEC in a punt return average a couple of years ago as well. Has played really all over. He's played box safety. He's played free safety. He's played in the boundary and the slot. Well, LSU did have Keon Scott on campus for a visit earlier in this week. Apparently, he was not their top target at safety. He left LSU. He made a visit to Houston, to Kentucky, and on Friday, Keon Scott committed to the University of Houston. So that's one more safety off the board. But again, it doesn't feel like, as far as I could tell, that was the push from LSU. I think they got Scott here. They wanted to go through that whole process, but he wasn't at the top of their list, and because LSU maybe wasn't as aggressive, he felt maybe more comfortable committing and playing at the University of Houston. Interestingly enough, just as a random sidebar with Houston, we think of Houston in terms of a G5 school, but remember, they are in the Big 12 now, and their athletic director at Houston is Eddie Nunez. Remember Eddie Nunez, who was an associate AD at LSU, became the athletic director at New Mexico and is now at Houston. Eddie Nunez did say today to the Houston Chronicle that the University of Houston fully intends on participating in revenue sharing with the student athletes at the fullest level. So meaning the cap is $20.5 million. So that's not just for football. That's the $20.5 million that schools are allowed to spend in revenue share and distribute to their student athletes. He said the University of Houston plans to fully participate in that $20.5. So you look around college football, really, but college athletics, which teams are trying to take that step up? SMU very clearly did it this year. They literally bought their way into the ACC. They said, "Don't worry about our revenue distribution. We'll cover it. Just let us in the league." So, that's how SMU bought their way in, and they bought a roster, and they made the playoff in year 1, which is incredible. Houston apparently trying to do the same thing. So that's a nice get for Houston. The flip side of it, though, for LSU, as I look at it with Keon Scott, just reading tea leaves, that would sort of suggest that they feel like they've got bigger fish and bigger possibilities. Now, the other prospect that was here this week is Tavarius Kolley. So Tavarius Kolley is the one that actually has kind of become the apple of LSU's eye. He played over 700 defensive snaps this season at NC State as a redshirt freshman. The LSU coaching staff very much sees him as a safety, although he's played all over as well. Remember, they need safety help, and you were not good at safety this year. Sage Ryan's now at Ole Miss. Major Burns is out of eligibility. You do have Jordan Gilbert coming back for a 5th season. He played injured really all of this season with a shoulder injury. You've got Deshaun Spears, a year older. You're playing Javid Toviano now at safety. But you need plug-and-play, ready-made starting safeties that can make you immediately better. It was your worst defensive position this past year. Your 2 lowest-graded starters were Major Burns and Jordan Gilbert. You've got to get better at safety. And you've got to go get a starting caliber safety. The great news is you had a multi-day visit from Tavarius Kolley. He went to Ole Miss, then came to Baton Rouge. So you got him here for multiple days, which is awesome. You were able to put your best foot forward. The disappointing part is that he left. As we've talked about, it's one of those things where if you want to kind of relate it to the NFL and free agency, the whole thing is when you get a free agent to your facility for a visit, you never want them to leave without signing the contract. So you want to close the deal while they're there because that's the best time. When you got them there and you can show them your facilities and they can meet the coaches and they can walk around and you can dine them and all that sort of stuff, that's the time you try to close. And so the fact that he left is a little disappointing. Now, he's leaving Baton Rouge and going to Kentucky, which wouldn't seem like the biggest competition. He did visit Ole Miss before he came to Baton Rouge, then he's going to Kentucky. So he's leaving NC State, and his next stop will be in the SEC at either Ole Miss, LSU, or Kentucky, it would presume, because those are the three places that he's visiting. But Tavarius Kolley would be an immediate upgrade with a plug-and-play starter at your greatest position of need. He's wrapped up his visit. I understand it went well, but as we always say, when does a recruiting visit not go well? Guys come to campus, they get everything for free. They get to go to great meals. They are catered to with everything. They see the best of everything. They get FaceTime with the coaches. So we'll see if it was enough for LSU. The other thing worth mentioning that I've been told sort of ear to ground is as LSU continues pursuing offensive linemen, in particular offensive tackles, I know LSU was trying to convince former Alabama offensive tackle Elijah Pritchett to make a visit to LSU. Now, he committed to Nebraska, but LSU was trying to get him to come and take a visit. Well, Nebraska has formally announced that Pritchett signed. So that's no longer a commitment, which is non-binding. He has signed. So that's another potential offensive line target off the board. Connor Moore is the player we told you about earlier this week from Montana State, the offensive tackle, the FCS All-American offensive tackle from Montana State. The Tigers are trying to get him for a visit, but he's a guy from Ohio, and he's got Ohio State on his list and Cincinnati on his list, and a lot of people think he's going to end up playing in his home state of Ohio, but the Tigers are trying to get him for a visit. But again, the wild card, as I've told you for several weeks now, LSU has, non-binding, silent commitments at offensive tackle and safety from players participating in the college football playoff. And if you're wondering about, I've explained this to you before, about tampering or how those communications go, and what I've said is every player has an agent, has a third party, has a rep, has a family member who effectively works the channels to see what someone's value is who might be interested, and then you could do quote-unquote deals silently, handshake deals. I mean, is that tampering? I guess it's legal tampering. It's only disallowed for coaches, reps of the program to directly contact the player. If that's not happening, then it's okay. I guess using air quotes there. But again, until that is done, it's never done. Look at what happened with Carson Beck. This is probably the best example, right? That's not related to LSU, so it doesn't sound like I'm pandering. Carson Beck declared for the draft, like he was going pro. And then all of a sudden, he puts his name in the transfer portal with a do not contact designation, meaning I'm in the portal, but I don't want schools reaching out to me, so do not contact me. And then a day later, boom, he signed with Miami. It was done already. Like it was already done. It's just how things work now through these back channels. So I do firmly believe that LSU, through third parties, feels very good about their commitments from about the opportunity to land a safety and an offensive tackle on teams participating in the college football playoff. Players that aren't currently or formally in the transfer portal. However, that's never done until it is. And I think one of the reasons that nobody wants to mention names or schools or anything of the sort is because you don't want to put anything out there that could jeopardize getting that done. But understanding that those things aren't done until they are, you got to cover all your bases. And if you need help at tackle and you need help at safety, then you have to act like you don't have those people on board. And you have to go ham after something that's readily available. It's kind of like that show, Deal or No Deal. Remember that show? You open up the case and the banker's giving you money and you decide, do you want to take the bird in hand or do you want to see if you got a better deal down the road? At some point, you got to weigh the risk and reward. And you got to have a safety. I've said this. I can't say this any more plainly. You cannot kick off against Clemson next year without adding a safety. You cannot do. You have this is not a man you really like to. You have got to add a safety. And you don't want to end up in a situation in the spring like you were in last year's spring portal window at defensive tackle. So you can add one of these guys now, you do it. It looks like Tavarius Kolley's the one they're targeting, and we'll keep an eye on offensive line as well. So portal update there as we head into the weekend. Brian Kelly told you before Christmas, this might take a while because you'll have all the way until January 25th. Remember, the national championship game is on Monday the 20th. You got 5 days after that for the two teams playing in the championship game for those players to enter the portal. So this could go all the way until January 25th before we know what players are a lot of players that are actually entering the transfer portal. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.